And we are, as a people, inherently and historically
Wake up.
opposed to secret societies, the secret oaths, and the secret proceedings.
The show that asks questions about why we don't ask questions.
What the hell is going on?
This is Conspiracy Queries with Alan Park. Thank you for tuning in, Conspiracy Queries. Welcome. These are Conspiracy Queries. I am Alan Park. On June 10th of this year, Brazilians took to the streets to protest over a 20-cent bus fare hike. Okay, clearly I don't have all the facts here. I have been to Brazil and I have ridden the bus, and they're nice, but they're not that nice. I guess I would have been protesting as well. No, I wouldn't. It's only 20 cents. Okay, there must be something else wrong. There is also a discrepancy in the pay rates there in Brazil between politicians and real people. There are other outrageous privileges for the rulers and a shocking lack of basic necessities for everyone else. There are new football stadiums going up, or soccer stadiums, if you prefer, that are far too expensive. And getting ready for the Olympics is far too expensive, particularly at the cost of decent hospital care. The list goes on, and nobody seems to articulate these needs on mainstream news coverage. I'll give you a minute. I know you'll find that that's hard to believe. But our guest today is a representative of Change Brazil. You can find him on YouTube by looking up Change Brazil. And we are going to get in on the ground perspective of the inequity and the government malfeasance. I don't really know if it's malfeasance. I just like saying malfeasance. But they do have a lot of chicanery. Was that a better one? Going on there. That almost anybody that's awake in the world already has a pretty good idea of government malfeasance. And so our telephone conversation today is with a formerly suspected CIA agent, and he will explain how that happened, and an online representative of the movement known as Change Brazil. He will be with us shortly, Silvio Maya. Ed Snowden, where are you? Come in, Ed. Come in, Ed Snowden. Are you there? Where are you, Ed Snowden? Wow, the problems this guy has. A man without a country. After letting the cat out of the bag on the secrets that the NSA spies on us. Ooh, I knew the NSA spied on us, and I'm not running around the world looking for a place to live. But Ed Snowden, that's what he's doing. Unfortunately, right now, the best I can understand things, there are two really good stories, both of which make sense regarding Ed Snowden. The first story is that he did what he did, and it is as it appears to be. He released information to the world through The Guardian and Glenn Greenwald that the NSA spies on us. Now, the thing that bothers me about this is that I used to say this kind of thing to people a long time ago and would often be written off. Oh, come on. You think the CIA's doing everything. You think they're doing that? You must be crazy. And there was just so much information at the time that I had come across even before the internet, ladies and gentlemen, if you can imagine such a time in your lives, that there was ample evidence that this was indeed the case. And then the author James Bamford put out a book called Puzzle Palace, and I read that and gobbled it up. It was very interesting, but no one else that I knew was reading it, and it was just hard to believe. But the personal score I have with this is that after spending so much time, casually and sometimes more actively trying to convince people, no, they really do listen to us. They monitor everything. They store all of it. People would say, no way, you're wrong, you're nuts. And now that it turns out that that is the case, people say, so what? Who cares? No, you don't get to have that thing. You don't get to say, you're nuts for believing something. You're wrong for thinking this. And then when it actually comes true, you make the move to say, so what? It doesn't matter. You got to own up to your wrongness. It takes a big man to admit he was wrong. So that doesn't explain Toronto's mayor. But anyway, the point I'm trying to make is I knew this was happening. A lot of people knew this was happening. Now this guy is running around the world trying to get safe harbor because he feels he will be prosecuted and probably jailed forever in the United States if he is to return. And he's probably right on that front. Unless the whole thing was a setup. Now, it could be a setup. It seems, if you read the blog of my former guest on the show, John Rappaport, at nomorefakenews.com, very unlikely that the best spy agency in the world with the most resources and the most stringent tracking abilities didn't realize that one of their own relatively low-level grunts would be able to download every single precious secret onto a thumb drive, or maybe he had a bigger hard drive that he was toting around with him, to be able to unload that stuff, take it, fill up 4 laptops, then have himself not known to be where he's going to be, scooting around the world, and gosh darn it, the NSA just can't seem to find him. They don't know his next move. And when you consider that the NSA and the CIA are clamoring for the same budget, the same funds from the government, and that the CIA is, well, they're in a rivalry with each other. These agencies, they apparently don't like each other by all accounts. What a perfect thing to do to set up one of their own, former agent of the CIA, Ed Snowden, or probably just a contractor with them as well at the time, and then have him go into the NSA and do this stuff. But even if that happened, I don't still understand if the NSA, how they could have been fooled by it. So they must have been in on it somehow as well. There just aren't any answers, solid answers to this. And the only thing is it has brought together some people on both sides of the political spectrum in the States. A lot of Republicans want him done away with. Donald Trump wants him hanged. You're fired. And a lot of Democrats as well. So we'll have to see. Unfortunately, after applying to several countries so far for asylum, and you wouldn't apply to all of them. Like, you're not going to fill out an entry form for the Ivory Coast or places of that ilk. But he did actually get turned down by just about everywhere else he has applied to. There's a bit of a difficulty with Iceland and Ecuador and other places that we thought might want to take Snowden. He has to get to their embassy somewhere, and that's the difficult part for him. But he has been taken with wide open arms by North Korea. Oh, my goodness. What a fantastic place that would be to go for the rest of your life. North Korea. Yeah, they say he can come in. He can become a citizen right away. They're going to move a lot of paperwork around for him, no problem, because they can do stuff like that because their leader comes from a line of insane people. So he'll be able to go in there and, wow. I guess after a while, if no one else takes him, he's going to have to go there. But what does Ed Snowden write back? Yeah, thanks, North Korea. I appreciate it. I hear what you're saying. I get it. You've got a thing against the states, and I would be a bit of a coup for you to have. Right. Okay. Let me just get back to you. Okay. Still checking a few other places out, so give me some time on that one. So that's what Ed Snowden is doing. It says here that also, this is something that irks me a little, that in Bolivia, the presidential plane of Bolivia was forced to land in Europe. This is from CNN. Bolivian officials say their country's presidential plane had to land in Austria after false rumors circulated. That's the thing about rumors, is I've heard that they're not true. That's just something going around. But they say that former U.S. National Security Agency contractor Ed Snowden was aboard the aircraft. The Bolivian aircraft that had to be forced to land in Austria. So where does America get any kind of rights to force an aircraft to the ground? Because they've got a hunch. Portuguese authorities wouldn't let President Evo Morales' plane land for refueling in Lisbon. The Bolivian Defense Minister Ruben Saavedra told CNN and Espanol. French authorities also wouldn't let the plane enter their airspace. We are told that there were some unfounded suspicions that Mr. Snowden was on the plane, Bolivian Foreign Minister David, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that, Choquahuanca said. We do not know who has invented this lie. Someone who wants to harm our country. This information that has been circulated is malicious information to harm this country. So he's put two sentences together that pretty much say the same thing. In a televised address late Tuesday night, Bolivian Vice President Alvaro Garcia Linera described Morales as a hostage of imperialism. Yeah, so I have to wonder why a Bolivian plane leaving Portugal has been forced to land in Austria. Because America's got a hunch. It's too much power. So good luck, Ed Snowden. Your hopes of finding asylum from the U.S. are appearing dim. Bolivia and Venezuela seem supportive, but he can't seem to get in there right now. I don't know who else there is to come to. You have to come to like the Marshall Islands or some other tiny little place. We shall see. Who knows? The continuing saga of Ed Snowden continues. Sometimes it is true that I am criticized for criticizing Canada and criticizing our oil policy, which I know folks in Alberta really love and might have something to do with my absence from that territory over the last several years. I love the people, but I never really seem to find a way to get out there. I hope to change that. But it's not just my perception of what's going on in this country. How about this from Foreign Policy magazine? How much more foreign could it get? It's called Oh Canada, and there's a comma after the O, as in Oh Canada. How America's friendly northern neighbor became a rogue, reckless petrostate. For decades, the world has thought of Canada as America's friendly northern neighbor, a responsible, earnest, if somewhat boring land of hockey fans and single-payer health care. On the big issues, it's long played the global Boy Scout, reliably providing moral leadership on everything from ozone protection to landmine eradication to gay rights. The late novelist Douglas Adams once quipped that if the United States often behaved like a belligerent teenage boy, Canada was an intelligent woman in her mid-30s. Basically, Canada has been the United States, not as it is, but as it should be. But a dark secret lurks in the northern forests. Over the last decade, Canada has not so quietly become an international mining center and a rogue petrostate. It's no longer America's better half, but a dystopian vision of the continent's energy-soaked future. That's right. The good neighbor has banked its economy on the cursed elixir of political dysfunction, oil. Flush with visions of becoming a global energy superpower, Canada's government has taken up with pipeline evangelists, petroleum bullies, and climate change skeptics. Turns out the Boy Scouts not just hooked on junk crude. he's become a pusher. And that's not even the worst of it. With oil and gas now accounting for approximately a quarter of its export revenue, Canada has lost its famous politeness. Since the Conservative Party won a majority in the Parliament in 2011, the federal government has eviscerated conservationists, Indigenous nations, European commissioners, and just about anyone opposing unfettered oil production as unpatriotic radicals. It has muzzled climate change scientists, killed funding for environmental science of every stripe, and in a recent pair of unprecedented omnibus bills, systematically dismantled the country's most significant, long-cherished environmental laws. The author of this transformation is Prime Minister Stephen Harper, a right-wing policy wonk. Their words, not mine, but true. And evangelical Christian with a power base in Alberta, ground zero of Canada's oil boom. Just as Margaret Thatcher funded her political makeover of Britain on revenue from North Sea oil, Harper intends to methodically rewire the entire Canadian experience with petrodollars sucked from the ground. In the process, he has concentrated power in the Prime Minister's office and reoriented Canada's foreign priorities. Harper, who took office in 2006, increased defense spending by nearly $1 billion annually in his first 4 years and has committed $2 billion to a prison expansion with a tough-on-crime policy that ignores the country's falling crime rate. Meanwhile, Canada has amassed a huge federal debt, its highest in history, at some $600 billion and counting. Liberal critics like to say Harper's political revolution caught many Canadians, generally a fat and apathetic people, by surprise. A combination of self-delusion and strategic deception. That may be true, but though Canadians live in high latitudes, they're not above baser human instincts like greed. Harper is aggressively pushing an economic gamble on oil, the world's most volatile resource, and promising a new national wealth based on untapped riches far from where most Canadians live that will fill their pocketbooks and those of their children for generations, with nearly 3/4 of Canadians supporting oil sands development in a recent poll. What is wrong with us? Harper seems to be selling them on the idea. The article goes on. You should read it. Have a look at Foreign Policy magazine for an honest and distant perspective on what's wrong with this nation. But for now, it's time to meet the new owners. Get that music up now. The beautiful Canadian anthem as interpreted by Chinese-Canadian musician Bob Wiseman. All right. Well, we need to know more about our Chinese brethren, and now that they own our country, it turns out that, there was a huge fire in Europe, in England, with a Chinese lantern. That was the trigger of the whole situation, and so now they are looking at banning Chinese lanterns, if you can believe it. No more Chinese lanterns, so if you've got one, you could probably sell it for a lot on eBay for anybody that has a Chinese lantern, or maybe hang on to it. But they will soon be outlawed as we solve another problem by banning a relatively harmless inanimate object. Also, this is from the National Post, Canada's favorite publication that's been running at a loss ever since Conrad Black started it up in 1997. And in fact, if this publication were allowed to live by the capitalistic terms it so espouses, it would have gone out of existence a long time ago. But they prop it up with monies from other areas of their media empire. Nonetheless, they bring us this report from Beijing. A Chinese magazine's report on abuses at a notorious labor camp is giving reformers added ammunition in a campaign to abolish a part of the penal system that China's government says needs change. The report this week in Lens magazine documents the long hours worked by female inmates at the Masanjia labor camp and the punishments for breaking rules or not meeting production quotas for cutting fabric, making buttonholes, sewing and ironing clothes for apparel makers. Based on interviews with ex-inmates, prosecutors, and former current camp officials. The 14-page report describes prisoners being locked in tiny punishment cells, shocked with electric batons, handcuffed to 2 bunk beds with arms stretched wide, and bound to a bench with their backs hunched over and hands and feet cuffed. Wait a second, is this a report from Abu Ghraib? Is this an American? No? Okay. While abuses in the labor camps are generally known among the public, the report, rare in that it appeared in a formally published domestic magazine, shocked Chinese people in its details. Printed in a little-known magazine, it was posted online where it quickly spread and became the most read story of the week on the 4 biggest news sites before it was censored and then reposted on a few other sites. So that's what's going on over there. Legal experts and public intellectuals seized on it. Public intellectuals. To renew their calls. Some intellectuals are just, at home being quiet about it. To renew their calls to end the punishment centers known formally as re-education through labor. Sounds Orwellian, doesn't it? Wait no time to repeal re-education through labor, sociologist Yu Zhangrong posted on his Twitter-like microblog hosted by Sina Weibo, which has more than 1.6 million followers. By the way, that's about 1.5999 more followers than I have on Twitter. I'd like to take this time right now. If you're listening to the show, send me a Twitter ball at con_queries.com. Let's get the conversation going. I did get a lovely letter. Was not a letter, it was a Twitter. And then she used the Twitter to get onto the email and discuss her situation at Canadian universities and her experience there as a professor on the short end of the tenurial stick. And if you go back into the archives of conspiracyqueries.com, you'll see that episode featuring David Noble. Anyway, that's got nothing to do with the Chinese. Let's move on. All right. The next story is a coroner in the To Kwa Wan fire inquest issues urgent call to prevent death traps. This is a thing they actually have to do, is to prevent death traps. I mean, if you're actually using the word death trap, you know you're in trouble. A coroner has urged government officials to strengthen fire safety measures at walk-up buildings after returning a verdict of accidental death on all 4 victims of a 2011 blaze in To Kwa Wan. Coroner Michael Chan Pik Kyu yesterday said various government offices, including the Buildings Department and the Fire Services Department, should take the initiative to speed up simple improvement works rather than wait for building owners to carry them out, because that never really happens. He said the government could implement preventative measures like installing alarms in the stairwells at costs that will, quote, will not be very high. Yeah, see if you can get a couple alarms going in those buildings that are death traps. Sometimes China's a little bit ahead of the curve, other times not so much. You want to get some fire alarms going in the building. All right, and just to close out the Meet the New Owners segment, I'd like to say at this time it has come in, according to The Telegraph in England, that the world's richest bank is Chinese. HSBC in 4th place was the only British bank in the top 10, largely because of the significant contribution from its Asian business. Standard Chartered was the only British bank to improve ranking. Then it goes on to lament the poor performance of, British banks in this British partisan publication. But it says ICBC, and for my BC fans, no, it's not about the car insurance company. The Industrial and Commercial Bank of China occupied pride of place, jumping from 3rd place to top spot, changing places with who? Bank of America. JP Morgan remained in 2nd place. So China now has the most richest bank in the world. Well, they are the new owners, and and they're going to profit quite nicely from the oil we're practically giving away right here in Canada, thanks to Stephen Harper. All right, let's go have an interview. I'm on the phone with Silvio Maya Jr. He is a resident of Brazil. Now, I know that's a huge country, but he's gonna pin that down for us. And Silvio Maya Jr. is with the movement Change Brazil. I came across Silvio as part of a YouTube effort bringing the news of what's happening in Brazil to the rest of the world, and thank goodness for that, because I heard some things on this video that I've not heard in mainstream news. We're going to speak with Silvio now. He's on the line. Silvio, how are you?
After the video had the repercussion that it wound up having, I guess I've been a little more in the public eye than we had previously planned for me to be in. But everything's still going great. I am doing all I can to help the movement go along. And, we're in the fight. Nothing too bad has happened to me yet. A couple of death threats, but nothing out of the norm.
Now, let's just start with a few basic points. First of all, where are you right now in Brazil?
Currently, I am residing and having this conversation in the city of Joinville, in the state of Santa Catarina. That is in the southeastern, I believe, corner of Brazil.
Okay. And tell us what happened. Here's what I understand about this. It just exploded one day, and we got the news that people were rioting in the streets, complaining about the government. What really happened, and what triggered this explosion as far as you're concerned?
Yeah, it may have appeared as an explosion to outside observers, but it really was anything but that. I guess it would be more proper to call it a slow burn of sorts. Over the last 2 decades, slowly our governments and our senators have allowed themselves more and more wiggle room that pertains to little freedoms that they should never have with public money. And these have come at the expense of some basic education and health things that we are just not getting. And all of that really kind of erupted at the eve of the World Cup, which is just a blatant example of how little they care about the Brazilian people, because so much of the public money is being going to stadiums when there's such basic public concerns that are not being met.
Sorry, I wanted to ask you about that in particular. As far as the Olympics go and World Cup soccer, I live in Toronto, and we have a huge Brazilian population here, and I can tell you that whenever the World Cup or any of these events go on, there are all kinds of people thrilled and happy and cheering for Brazil, and Brazil always does quite well for themselves. And what I'm hearing from you seems somewhat incongruous. You don't want new stadiums. You don't want state-of-the-art facilities for football. And I just want to have a little closer perspective from your end on why that is, because we have the impression that, like, Brazil is all about soccer, the way Canada is all about hockey.
Well, that would be probably true. Of course, when you do not live in a country, you only have the information that is, given to you by the media vehicle. So it's understandable that we would have the perception of a nation that prioritizes soccer. That is also partly true. It's a great pride. It always has been towards our people, and it's great to be the country that has such a talented and renowned soccer team. However, as interesting and as cool as the sporting, athletic events and entertainment venues may be, that's really what they are, entertainment venues. And of course, before being sports lovers or entertainment lovers or music lovers or whatever we will be seen as in the world, we are still human beings that need the proper care and treatment that any self-respecting government would provide. So we are not against the stadium. We wouldn't be completely against the building of it if we had been a nation that was under proper conditions to receive and hold such an event. However, there are much more pressing concerns that are happening with us right now, and they have over the course of the years. I believe that before thinking about, or not only I believe, but all the people that are in the streets protesting, and I would prefer that to use the word protesting, because rioting might imply the idea that we're being violent, when the overwhelming majority of people are just walking around at times.
The overwhelming majority of people are what?
The building of the stadiums, we would like them to be built, some jobs to be created. It will bring some foreign business interests into Brazil, which is also great for trade and whatnot. But some things need to be taken care of first, you know. And for someone to have such a disregard for other people, to still bat an eye, you know, and not look at the things that are happening in regards to education and safety and health, and still build a stadium, I think that's what really gets us.
Okay.
We would like to have a sporting event, but we would like to have also all the cool things that come before that. Yeah.
And tell me about some of the problems you talked about in the video, which, by the way, thank you for putting out a video in English. I notice your English is quite good. If I were able to speak Brazilian Portuguese, I don't think I'd know the equivalent for wiggle room, which you mentioned earlier.
Oh.
But tell me what's been going.
Thank you, sir.
What's been going on with the hospitals? I mean, this thing for us, it all came out to be like a 20 cent, is it, a bus hike, and then that was the fuse that finally put you over the edge. But there's also hospital, health concerns. What kind of disrepair is the country in right now?
Well, one of the most pressing problems with the country of Brazil is its vastness. It's geographically, it's huge. Right. And I guess that's a difficult thing to manage. As Brazil has evolved over the course of the years, it has just happened that the southern part of Brazil has become more developed economically than the northern part. And that's also due to a number of reasons. Maybe geographically it's more arid up there. But that has caused for a lot of investments to come down here in the south, where I currently reside. And the north has been forgotten by industries because a lot of them have not bothered to go there. As of recently, that has changed a little bit, but over the course of time, it hasn't been the case. The hospitals, in the examples that I have told you, are things that have happened and they have hit headline news. We didn't put the links to the news stories from which I took those excerpts because I didn't want anyone in the Brazilian public to think that I was being paid by a rival news station in order to smear the reputation of a former one. But I can guarantee that the examples I have given, specifically the one about the critical condition patient being told to go by bus to a different hospital, that happened more than once. And there have been news stories documenting this kind of thing profusely over the course of Brazilian history, especially in the last 2 years. But no one has seemed to broadcast such specificity. And I thought that it was really necessary for people to see exactly what's going on in these cases. Also, about the patients lying around in hospital floors, which I also suggested, all you have to do is Google that, and you will see countless pictures of patients in hospitals in conditions that no human being should be forced to undergo. If you guys go online, you will see evidence of this happening. And I could go on, and explain in more detail all sorts of inhumane treatments that people in Brazil have been forced to be subjected to because of the lack of funding, given all the diverting of resources. But I thought those two were enough. But yeah, rest assured to their validity, they are absolutely true.
Okay, how many people were there? We had so many different reports, 100,000, 300,000, 1 million, 2 million. Do you have any idea what the total is at the peak of the protests in the various cities?
At the peak, we're definitely hitting a couple of million.
Couple of million.
Unfortunately, there are some interests as pertains to mass media to cover up what's going on in the protests because I guess they have the broadcasting rights to the international sporting events that will be taking place in the future. So they kind of play down the number of people that were on the street. But thankfully, we have the internet now, so it's more difficult to lie. People have more access to the truth, and from that, I can ascertain that it probably hit a couple of million in different times, too, and also in different cities in Brazil, which if somebody hasn't seen the map of Brazil, might be difficult to appreciate. But Brazil is gigantic, and the fact that so many people mobilize in so many different places over such a vast area is really just mind-boggling. The numbers really do speak to the effectiveness that this movement better have, or else God knows what's going to happen down here. But yeah, definitely, I would say a couple of million.
Geographically,
it definitely was like a few 100,000 in total, and coming in different waves at different parts of the country.
So geographically, how far away from Sao Paulo and Rio are you?
Personally, I will be about 5 hours away from the major cities.
Right.
I guess it will be I will give an American reference, but you guys are from Canada, so Yeah, then Canada, so it would be useless. But I
Yeah.
guess 5 hours is good enough for you guys to have an idea.
You can throw an American
I am
reference out.
relatively close.
You can throw an American
I
reference
can go
out.
American.
Sure.
I guess I would say New York, Boston, maybe.
Never heard of them.
Yeah, sorry, it's from New York to Boston. They're two American cities, the Northeast and Coast.
Okay, so what is your involvement with Change Brazil? How did Change Brazil come about?
It's so good that you guys asked that question, and I hope that it gets broadcast as much as possible because some rumors about my person and the institution have been brought up in order to weaken the cause. It's great to address it now. Change Brazil is really nothing more than a hashtag. That we have no investors. We have no outside interests, and we definitely don't have a hidden agenda. It came from a group of young people who are not affiliated to any political party. And some of us know history, and we know the effects of smearing or showing the degrading characteristics of a country's reputation to the world, which historically has happened pretty well against oppressive governments and regimes. Gandhi did it in India, and the Vietnamese did it in the Tet Offensive, and we thought it would be a good idea to do it here. But that's all we are. We are a group of young people that were dedicated to showing the world the real circumstances happening in Brazil, and that's what we did. There is no great benefactor behind it all. That also speaks to our motives. All we wanted to do was get the message out and hopefully establish a clear, coherent, and convenient channel between the Brazilian people and the eyes and ears of the world through Twitter, which is something we did. And once that mission has been accomplished, we believe that our goal is pretty much fulfilled. We didn't even want to have personal recognition for it. My name wound up becoming famous because people started speculating that I was some kind of government agent sent from a different government in order to overthrow the government here, establish a coup. You know, some of the things they will be saying about me. But that's all we are. We're just a bunch of committed young people. And I guess as somebody with our relative level of influence, to be able to talk to the world in this way is just a testament to how beneficial the internet can be, you know, when you use it in the right hands and for the right purposes.
So you're speaking with the world, but have you had any kind of contact with anyone in the Brazilian government?
It's funny. A few international media vehicles have contacted me, besides yourself. And once again, I thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to express what's happening over here.
Oh, you're welcome.
But the Brazilian government themselves haven't done anything, nor the Brazilian government, which we were already prepared for, you know, being arrested and whatnot. But that hasn't happened, at least yet. And even the people that started talking about us and coming out with these allegations, they haven't bothered to contact us either.
What are the allegations against your movement?
Just speculations as to an agenda behind it all. Of course, there is no proof because it's not real. This movement really was birthed, it was conceived at my house. So there's nothing really too special about it. They have no evidence, but that doesn't stop them from making the allegations that I was a CIA agent, someone went as far as to say, that infiltrated the Brazilian government and that put out a video in order to rile up the Brazilian community to overthrow Dilma and the administration that is currently in place, in order to substitute it with an administration that would heed, I think, American interests or whoever. And then, in order to exacerbate the situation, a very wealthy soccer team owner decided to put a hashtag Change Brazil sign at a Brazil game, which gave the hashtag, you know, national notoriety even more than it had before, and also even furthered the flame for speculations. And supposedly now I am working not only with the American government, but also with this soccer team owner, as we have a grand attempt and agenda to overthrow the Brazilian government. However, the vehicles that are saying this are blogs and magazines that are funded by PT, Partido dos Trabalhadores, which is the worker party, which they call it, which is also the party that is in power in the current administration. So it's easy to see where the allegation came from. You know, they're just an attempt to diminish the validity of our argument.
Is Change Brazil...
Which unfortunately has worked.
Is Change Brazil trying to... Can you clarify for me, are you trying to prevent the Olympics from being there? What is the goal as far as the Olympics are concerned? Really,
the World Cup and the Olympics, as our personal point of view stands, are, well, first off, they were just an example of how little the government care about us by, you know, directing the funds, as I have previously stated. But when it comes to our intentions with them, we really don't have much of a problem with them happening. But what we want are the more important basic needs that should have already been fulfilled, that should have already been met. And the attempt of Change Brazil, and also this other Brazilian lady who came out with another video called No, I'm Not Going to the World Cup. I think you guys might have seen it. If not, look it up. It's also very informative. The idea behind these videos is to bring the attention of the neglect of the Brazilian government towards the world. Not to cancel the events themselves, but if the canceling is what comes as a result of this, we have no problem with that. As it turns out, the Brazilian government and a lot of these people that have been putting these laws into action really couldn't care less about what the Brazilian populace has to say. However, as of 2014, 2016, there is a group of people they do care about, the world population. They want to look good in front of the eyes of the world, and we here at Change Brazil saw that as an opportunity to finally, persuade them a little bit more into doing what needs to be done. Once the world sees how ill-prepared Brazil is to host an event such as these two that it will host, hopefully they will decide, the government will decide to do something to change the things that should have been changed such a long time ago. I guess you could call our approach to the World Cup and the Olympics a strategy of sorts, but we definitely have nothing specifically wrong, or we have no arduous feelings against people themselves or the organizers of the Olympics. I'm sure that the people and they bring joy to many, but at the moment, something more important needs to be seen, and thankfully, we have the world's attention, because of the Olympics and the World Cup, and that's really all of our opinion regarding these things.
Well, I have some facts here that I want to check them with you because I got them from O Estado de Sao Paulo, a newspaper there, and they say that, and this kind of backs up what you were saying, but this is very impressive to me, that 84% of the people involved in Change Brazil, or the protesters rather, do not back any political party.
That's right. I guess when you combine the fervor of a group of young people wanting to change, as well as the skepticism that has arisen that has inevitably arisen from the disdain that the government has shown, it is, I believe, a very common or very understood reality that people just don't want the inherent dirt of politics involved in these protests. The corruption in Brazil, in the Brazilian government, has reached such obvious and incredible levels that it's pretty much everywhere. It has pervaded Brazil as a whole. When people see a political party, what they see is not a group of people trying to improve conditions as we the protesters are. What they do see is a group of people trying to use a beautiful movement to further their own agenda. They see the political parties as the villain, whichever these political parties may be. Some critics are saying that this will be the downfall of this movement. If we do not have a unilateral idea, and if we do not have a centralized leadership, there will be no way to bargain with the politicians what it is we want from them. However, a lot of people, including myself, disagree with this idea. It turns out that a person knows when they are doing something wrong. Ethics is a universal belief. It is a universal characteristic of all human beings. These politicians know how much money they're taking from us. They don't need a list in order to know what needs to change. You just got to stop stealing money. You just got to change the regulation and change the legislation, which makes it so that they get so much undeserved money coming from what the taxes that we pay. We do, a lot of Brazilians, the vast majority, is rejecting that the movement be headed or be spearheaded by any government party. And I believe that at the moment, such a leadership is not really required. We just need to let the government, whichever it is, whichever party is in Brazil at the moment or will be in the future, we just need to let the government know that we the people are awakened and that such actions will no longer be tolerated, regardless of who it is that is doing them.
As far as being awakened is concerned, I have to point out that for my listeners, this is an amazing statistic to me, that with so many people in Brazil, it says in this article that 40 million Brazilians have escaped absolute poverty, and now they have their basic needs attended to. But a lot of people are wondering, if their paycheck goes directly to the government, why their kids don't receive adequate education. Now, that's on the one hand, but on the other hand, the protesters are apparently made up of 77% of the protesters have higher education. So here in the protest movement, you've got a very high percentage of highly educated people, and simultaneously there's a great concern for the millions of people apparently who aren't getting a sufficient education, despite the fact that so much of their paycheck goes directly to the government. I find that to be very heartening and very telling. Tell me how much money from an average paycheck goes to the government.
So off the top of my head, I would not know exactly the percentage, but last time I checked, it would be anywhere from 35 to 50%. You could get as much as 70% once you incorporate sales tax. If you have an idea, just so you have an idea how much the government takes from the people, a car, a Camaro, I believe, will cost, I think, below $20,000 in America.
Right.
In Brazil, it will be upwards of $100,000.
$100,000.
$100,000 for something that will cost under $20,000 in America. That's the import good tax. You know, it's incredible. They take a great deal of money from the Brazilian people. They have done so for years. However, from your question, there's a few things that I would like to address if possible.
Sure.
That I hope people get to listen to show as much as they can and have as much of a reach possible so that these things can be clarified. First off, yeah, the statistics is true about people leaving extreme and absolute poverty. That is correct. However, the line between leaving extreme and absolute poverty and being anywhere near acceptable living conditions is still horrendously vast. You know, it would be the same as in comparing that a person that has $1 now has $2, and it's a 100% increase, but you wouldn't still call that a good thing. You know, the fact that people leave absolute poverty still leaves them in a pretty horrible situation. A lot needs to go beyond that. And I also would like to talk about this absolute poverty. I would like to address absolute poverty issues so you guys can have a clear understanding of the political play that has been going on in Brazil. There is a thing called Bolsa Familia.
Can you slow down?
It is the equivalent of a welfare check.
Okay.
And it is given by PT, the party that is not coincidentally in power, has been so for the last two presidential terms. What they do is the following. They will award a family that has no means, and prove so by documents, that they have no means to sustain themselves, the fathers or deployed or whatever. They will award that family a financial amount continuously with no incentive for the person to go back to work and with nothing saying for the person to stop receiving this money. The money just goes to them every month, and it is gauged by how many children that unemployed or disabled person has. So the more children that household possesses, the more money they will get, and there is no incentive for the person to get off of that welfare check and start working. So what we have is a number of people, we have had now two negative effects of this. First is a number of people that just do not want to contribute to the economy but working and just want to increase having as many children as possible to get as much money as possible from the government. Second, what we have is an incredibly, overwhelmingly large constituency for PT, the party that has been in power for two presidential terms. And they will continue to be in power because this enormous number of people that are not contributing to the economy will continue to vote for them. So just so you guys can have an idea of the power play that has been going on here in Brazil in order for the political parties to stay in check. And that is the reason that these people have escaped absolute poverty. But that sentence draws a prettier picture than it really is. Escaping absolute poverty means you get to eat. But it does not mean that you need to get to have an education in order to allow yourself a more gratifying lifestyle in the future or a better future for your children. It just means you're not starving, which by itself is okay. It's great, rather, but it needs to be a lot better. And the people that are fighting do have a higher education. Yes, all of us have attended tertiary school and college and whatnot. In fact, you're speaking to a person in English now, which I guess is testament to that. But that's because somebody stands up for them. You know, the people that are really suffering don't have the resources to manifest and to gather in a cohesive way, and someone has to do it. And we have decided to pick up the slack. And also, we suffer too. You know, regardless of what social status you're in, you still pay an incredible amount of taxes for services that you just don't see. Our streets are not paved right. Hospital systems still fail us at some point. So everyone in the Brazilian community is suffering from the incredible amount of corruption that goes on.
And these politicians have also awarded themselves quite a large pay raise recently. Isn't that true?
Yes. That is incredible, isn't it?
During all
these
of
things
this?
are happening and they still are taking money. However, some measures are being taken. The people are being heard, and these movements are having a certain amount of fruition. Recently, a law called PEC 37, PEC, P-E-C, is an acronym. It stands for Proposta de Emenda Constitucional, or rather a constitutional amendment proposal, is when they offer to add something to the Constitution, or rather to make it a law that will be undeniable in the future. PEC 37 was denied, and what it did is it gave one of the bodies in government, it denied one of these bodies the power to investigate crimes caused by politicians. That's what the law proposed to do, and it was shot down, I believe, invariably thanks to the protests that have been taking place exclusively against this law. So although they are being a little bit bold still, it has been retracting. The power of the people is definitely being heard. And hopefully it will continue to be heard until all of our demands are met.
How does it make you feel when all of this is going on? And I'm sure you're aware of what's been recently happening in Turkey, what's going on in Egypt right now, in Bulgaria, all over the place. Do you feel like there's something with the whole planet all of a sudden aligning because of better access to information? Or why do you think this is all happening at the same time?
Oh, definitely. If I were to congratulate one particular group of people to the revolution that are taking place, not even in the world really, but in Brazil, some are so vast and difficult to access unitarily, it will definitely be Facebook and Twitter. I guess when a group of people that have been oppressed somehow by a government sees that another group of people somewhere in the world are doing something to stop their oppression, it emboldens them. It gives them a fire in order to do something about themselves. We have really the most powerful weapon in our disposal now. Information is power. It always has been. And it is now the power that is giving so many people the fire to ask for justice. And what we're seeing now is an explosion that really hasn't stopped. It started with the Arab Spring a few years ago, and it has maybe weakened a little and re-risen. And I don't think this will stop ever. As long as there is a country that has whose population have a certain level of education, or historical education and internet access, governments are in a tight spot for the period of, as long as the internet continues to be a public domain, people from every country will continue to rise because they will see that other people are not taking it. So they will try not to take it anymore. I believe we are at the dawn of an incredible age, And I think an example of that is pretty much myself. I'm just a regular guy that posted a video, divulging information, and look at what that has turned into. And just like myself, there's a number of regular guys out there that are willing to put their legs on the line in order to make things better. As long as the internet is not taken from us, it will continue. And I think that's a good thing. Some people think it's chaotic, but, more power to the people. If the people are revolting, it's because there's something to revolt about. Nobody's going to the street and risking their life for nothing because it's a party. They want to go to a party, they go to a party, they go to a club, whatever. But they're fighting because there is a reason to fight. People say these guys are vandals. They're not. They're just because they want a better life. They want something better for themselves. Now they're having the motivation to do so. And I think it's a beautiful thing. And it's really humbling that I was one of the few people that have helped this flame continue.
Well, I was going to ask you if there was any parting message that you could make for people, but I think you've already done that for us. That was beautiful. Can you just offer what's one more thing that you would want people to know about Change Brazil before we go? And thank you very much for coming on today.
Man, and thank you so much for having me. And this is what I've been saying to everyone that's interviewed me. Make the change thing global. If you have internet access right now, come up with the Change Syria, Change Turkey, Change Canada, Change America. The hashtag change works, not only in Brazil but everywhere. Let the world know how the people feel. The more power we take away from the government-controlled media or from those that have special interests, the freer we will be to carry on our own revolutions and make our lives better for ourselves. That's number one. Start your changes. viewers, listeners, whichever you are, if you're getting this, go to the internet and start talking about government. Be interested in the stuff because these things affect you every single day. And lastly, the world is bigger than you, man. If you, well, not you, the radio, it's a viewer, but everyone who's hearing this, be willing to sacrifice. And if something comes up that needs your expertise and you can do something to help, don't think twice. Help. Don't listen to naysayers and don't mind the dangers inherent in it. The world needs people like you to move. It has been said that all evil needs to prevail for good men to do nothing, so don't be one of those people. You have all the power in your hands right now, and I myself personally am a testament of that. So help the world if you can.
Silvio, thank you very
And
much.
I guess that's all.
Thank you so much for coming on today. We'll be in touch with you again.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to Conspiracy Queries with Alan Park. Please offer comments or complaints by emailing conspiracyqueries@gmail.com or on Twitter @con_queries or at our website conspiracyqueries.com. Thanks for listening.